Let's go to line number 2. Good morning, Martine Blue. You're on the air.
Hi, good morning, Patty. I'm calling to voice my concerns about Everwind's Fuels turbine wind farm proposal for the Burin Peninsula.
Sure.
I find the scope of the project extremely alarming, and I think it's a potential boondoggle that in the making that would rip the guts out of the peninsula. Personally, I've read the company's environmental assessment, and I've done lots of other research. I'm sure you've seen the map of what they're proposing for the Burin Peninsula.
Yeah, so 10 gigawatts, which is enormous. They're talking about 3 different wind farms in 3 different stages. I think the total turbines would be 1,500. There's also 3 solar farms attached with Everwind Fuels proposal. Then, of course, you got the hydrogen ammonia production facility, which is just, I believe, north of Marystown, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, just 2 kilometers north of Marystown. There would be an ammonia pipeline, 2.5 kilometers of that. There would be access roads, cabling under and above the ground, a marine terminal in Mortier Bay, quarries blasted to make, potentially blasted to make the roads, as well as accommodations built for temporary workers. This would be the largest wind hydrogen project ever attempted. And it's 1,500 turbines. They are also huge in scope. So they're looking at potentially using land, 98% of Crown lands on the Burin Peninsula. So all the way from the project would sweep from Swift Current down to Point May. And people who are in favor of the project say that it won't take up that much land, but the scope of these wind turbines, so they are proposing 225-meter wind turbines that have to be 6 soccer fields apart. So just that alone means that the scope of this would be vast. It would cover vast amounts of land. I think it's a concern, and I don't think as many people know about it as should. This could potentially affect our groundwater, everyone who has wells. It could affect people who like to berry pick, as I do, hunters, fishers. It would affect our access to the Crown lands, and we love our access to the forest and wildlands, as lots of other people do in the around the province. There's such adverse effects that could happen. Those turbines could catch on fire. They could whip chunks of ice up to 450 meters. They're proposing to have them just a kilometer away from some houses, so people would see them. People, they also tend to leak oil. There's issues with the hydrogen plant. There could be explosions there. There could be ammonia leaks from the plant and the pipeline. It's so concerning on so many levels. Some
of those issues that you speak to already have provincial regulations in place. I know a lot of people lean into the risks associated with ammonia because it can be quite volatile. But of course, ammonia is being used in almost all of the rinks in the province. So we have an understanding of inspection and the storage and the use and the safety associated with ammonia. Other things like ice formation, ice throw. There has, and I mean, I'm not going to say it's not a thing because it is a thing, but some of those things have waned insofar as how they, for instance, if I de-ice a plane, similar approach can be taken to a turbine, is my understanding. So it doesn't eliminate the risk, but it can be managed if the companies are forced to do what they should be forced to do insofar as that goes. The scale and the scope or the magnitude of the turbines, I think, is absolutely a fair concern that people voice because, and I spoke to Minister Parsons on this program, I'm not sure, last week or the week before, ask him specifically about it. Historically speaking, the buffer zone regarding residences and the turbines has been 1 kilometer. But those turbines that he's referring to, or that historical buffer zone refers to, pale in comparison with the size of the turbines being proposed here. So that, and even if people stuck with that one, which would seriously compromise the proposals from the proponents, because if that 1 kilometer became 2 or 3, then consequently there would have to be a careful revisiting of their proposal period, given how much of the land mass would be taken up by wind farms. So I think that proximity question is not going away.
Yeah, well, if you think about it in scale, so 225 meters tall is the size of 3 Confederation buildings stacked on top of each other. and they're proposing 1,500 of these on the Burin Peninsula, and it's just that I just find that alarming right there. Exactly, like you said. There's questions about the gentleman Trent Vichy, who owns EVREC Fuels. He's been recently accused of workplace violations in a New York court. He was an equity investor until just about 2 years ago when he bought the Point Tupper transfer facility in Nova Scotia. With a subsidy from a loan from the federal government for $166 million. So they paid for that facility after they got the loan to develop the Newfoundland and Labrador project on the Burin Peninsula. So he was an equity investor up until just 2 years ago, and now he's in this racket. And he named a domestic worker a secretary for EVREC Fuels on his board. So this, there's questions about these folks who start jumping onto this. The bid went up from, I guess, the federal government for projects to, bid on wind projects, but I don't find them responsible. The energy produced is lossy. Up to 80% of the energy gets lost with the transfer from hydrogen to ammonia and then back to hydrogen.
Where are you getting that 80% number? I haven't seen that number as high as that.
I've seen it a couple of times. I would have to, I've read it in my research, so I'd have to get back to you on exactly where I read it, but it's I've read 70 and 80%.
The energy loss is real.
And that was published by the Halifax Examiner.
Yeah, and as a matter of fact, EverWind has final approval for 3 wind farms in Nova Scotia. They really are much smaller. I mean, one is, I think, 49 turbines, so far cry from 1,500. When you use the word boondoggle what? How? So are we talking about an environmental boondoggle or their business model, which seems to be fatally flawed if you look at even the federal government's downgrading of the forecast of the value of the green hydrogen market by mid-century from 12 trillion to 2 trillion? So when you say boondoggle, what do you mean?
I do mean environmentally and financially. Environmentally, because if they go ahead and start building this and the project collapses, the province has to mitigate all the damage. So these bases that they want to put in would be like 20 feet of concrete and steel, and they're talking about putting in 1,500 of them, right? So the amount of land, the bogs, the forests that they have to clear to put these things in, as well as the access roads. So say they get, a third of the project in, and then they're financing I know that they have to get the financing approved, but if something falls apart, if there's not enough buy on the other end, then I think it would be an environmental devastation.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a crystal ball, nor do you, but from everywhere you look regarding, even if we're just talking price point for the end customer, and in this case, everyone leans on Germany because there's been an MOU signed, which doesn't really mean a whole lot at this moment in time. The Germans...
No, it's not a contract.
Nah, the Germans, they haven't even started to build the offloading infrastructure. So they can come over here with the most recent trip, and the German envoy said they're going to wean themselves off of fossil fuels, including natural gas, leaning on things like green hydrogen, but at the exact same time, not doing anything to advance their cause on their end. So the supply-demand mismatch is extremely real. They've also set aside, I think it's 1.2 billion euro for the short term to subsidize the price point for green hydrogen. So most people are looking around thinking, how does this business model even work? Does it make sense? And I just looked no further than what Mr. Risley and World Energy are doing. They've come forward with a plan B because of all the other things that we are reading and seeing and understanding. They were talking about the flow of hydrogen next year. And of course, that target's not going to be hit. Will they ever hit the target? Will they ever build these turbines and these production facilities? I don't know. But all of a sudden, we're talking about a data center on the Port Peninsula. That didn't just come out of nowhere.
Exactly. Exactly. And this isn't energy that goes to us. They're proposing it to go to Germany. I'm personally not against wind turbines, but I think if we were to develop it responsibly and to benefit Newfoundlanders and Labradorians, like these they're proposing all the energy to go to Germany, and the company says they're willing to sell us excess energy. They're willing to look at selling us excess energy. So we get all of these turbines and all of the negative environmental effects from them, but we get no energy from them.
I wonder, would the conversation sound any different if we were talking about power for domestic use? Probably not drastically, but I think it would be a different conversation, because we're talking about Newfoundland Labrador Hydro at this very moment, looking at the projected increase in demand and talking about things like 150 megawatt generators to be located at Holyrood. If we were talking about, you know, smaller wind farms like we already have down in Ramia and up the Southern Shore, if that was part of the domestic conversation for the power load, then maybe it wouldn't be quite as contentious as it is. I don't know, not to remove the fact that people would still be worried about the environment, but I think it would feel a little bit different. I might be kidding myself, but I think it would.
Oh, I think so too. And if it weren't so massive, if we started with a project that was smaller and manageable and responsible and benefited us, I think that it would be a whole different conversation.
Quite possibly.
But something, you know,
Marteen, anything else?
Massive.
Anything else before we say goodbye?
I do encourage people who are concerned to read the environmental assessment, to research, to speak up. Also, there's a community meeting in Lawn tonight at between 6:30 and 8:30. So if people are in that area, they can join fellow concerned citizens and talk about what we can do and where we can go from here.
Appreciate the time, Marteen. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.